It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Yes, it does on a very busy Friday, and great to have you with us. Thank you for the introduction, Chad Erickson. We got a lot to do over the next 60 minutes, including visits from Tino Patino because it's a NASCAR Friday with NASCAR headed to Talladega, including a visit from our friend Dennis Bernstein at thefourthperiod.com and SiriusXM NHL Radio, and a visit from Robert Littal from Black Sports Online, because we talk to him every Friday about some of the top stories in sports. But we have to get to the NFL and the NFL draft with such a busy show today. And Sam Yarnell, you thought there would be trades. There was one big one at the top, and then one towards the later end of the first round, and then one at the very end of the round. So we wound up with 3 trades in the first round, 2 that were certainly of consequence. The last one, not necessarily so. But the big stories, let's go through them real quick here. Travis Hunter, obviously, taken second by the Jaguars, who trade up with the Cleveland Browns, who punt on a generational player. There is nothing more, and I don't care what they got in return, because I don't trust them with the future picks anyway, because they've been so negligent with this franchise to begin with. That's one. I love the pick for the Jags. I don't have an issue with them trying to go for it with Hunter and bring in, this sort of transformational, once-in-a-generation player. I do have an issue with the Browns punting on the pick. And essentially, as of right now, we still don't know where they're going with the quarterback position. There will be options after this draft is done if they don't draft a quarterback, if they don't go and get Shedeur Sanders, if they don't trade for Kirk Cousins, which is a possibility as well. There will be options for them. I want to know, first off, what you made of the Browns' decision to punt it too.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a great decision. Look at what they got back in return. No, it was a very organizationally savvy decision by the Cleveland Browns. And honestly, you have to understand it from a Browns perspective, because so many times they've had the home run can't miss prospect fall into their lap, and every time it happens, except for Myles Garrett, seemingly they miss. So I'm not going to hold it against them that they didn't want to go for that again. And quite frankly, when you add a guy in Mason Graham 3 picks later, a guy who early in the college football season was contending for the number 1 overall pick, I don't think you should complain about that at all. They've built one of the best, if not the best, defensive lines in the NFL after yesterday's draft. And they've built on their franchise for years to come, including already having multiple first-round picks next year and multiple picks in the second round on Friday night, Jason.
As I pointed out, I don't trust them with the picks, because they just showed me they punted on the pick of a once-in-a-generation type player that could really rejuvenate a franchise that right now needs rejuvenating. Great. I agree with you on Mason Graham and all that he brings to the table. Problem is, you got to score points. And they haven't been able to score points because they've sucked at the quarterback position. They've sucked everywhere on offense, and they needed somebody to help them with that. And Travis Hunter could have helped them on both sides of the ball. As a lot of people point out, he's 2 players in one. I don't like it. But
if they needed someone to throw the ball, how is a guy who catches the ball going to help them?
Well, if you get somebody who can catch the ball, it's going to make whoever you have throwing the ball a little better. As we always say, there's 2 types of quarterbacks in this game. Some who need help at the receiver position to make them better, and some who make receivers better. Right now, what they have at quarterback is certainly somebody who's going to need to help make them better. All of that notwithstanding, got to get to the second half of this draft. Listen, and I'm not saying this because their helmet is above me. The Giants are huge winners in the first round with the combination of Abdul Carter and Jackson Dart. And Dart's going to be able to come in and learn at a very reasonable pace because of what they already have at the quarterback position, Sam. I thought the Giants were big winners.
I thought they had a very good draft. I thought what made them questionable on draft night was literally, I don't know if you saw this, Jason, 7 minutes after the Jackson Dart pick was announced, Joe Shane and Brian Daboll were in front of microphones saying that Russell Wilson is their starter going into camp. First of all, New York, let me teach you a thing or two. You haven't had the best track record with picking who's going to be your starting quarterback over the course of the last 4 years. On top of that, you're going to give it to Russell Wilson coming off of a season where he stole the job from a quarterback who was outplaying him simply because Russell Wilson had already been promised the starting quarterback job there. Third of all, oh my gosh, you're just going to pass up on Jameis Winston that quickly? I'd argue you should give the ball to Jameis Winston before you give it to Russell Wilson, and I think you should give it to Jackson Dart before you give it to either of them.
Nah.
So while the Giants drafted incredibly and made their team better for years to come, Joe Shane and Brian Daboll made themselves somehow, with a great draft, even a step closer to being out the door.
Well,
what horrible management.
I don't necessarily have an issue with it one way or the other, because I think they took the approach, and I think they probably told Jackson Dart this: look, you're going to learn in year one. We've got two established veteran guys, and maybe the Maras have given them some sort of comfort in the fact that, hey, if we're not good this year, we're gonna give you a year, with Jackson Dart, that those guys are gonna be extended ultimately, as long as it isn't an absolute train wreck or some sort of mutiny. We'll have to wait and see on that. I want to know what you think of Shedeur Sanders slipping out of the first round, because everybody and their mother said it was 96 or 97% certainty that he'd be drafted in the first round. And nothing is more perfect than, or more emblematic of what happened in the first round to Shedeur Sanders than the shot of ESPN going to his draft party in Canton, Texas, only to have an empty room with some pillows on a couch and no Shedeur Sanders. Nothing more emblematic of what the first round meant for Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, I really hate to be that guy, but I feel like every time we talk about him during the college football season, it was like, this kid is not a first-round talent.
I think he
and
is.
There was a tweet that dropped 5 picks into the draft. I don't remember whether it was Schultz or Breer, one of these guys who was breaking all the news. By the way, next time we have Jordan Schultz on the show, it'll be very interesting to ask him, because after about the 5th pick in the draft, everyone stopped breaking news. I think the NFL may have said something to all the newsbreakers who were letting the picks out early. Listen, on the Shedeur thing, it came out very quickly in the draft once we got past that 3rd pick that organizations really didn't view him as a first-round talent. And it's a sad reality, but it's the truth. I don't think they ever really did. And it seems like all of this, he's going to go 3rd overall, may have always been smoke.
Mel Kiper, the entire first round, was basically saying, best quarterback in the draft. Best quarterback in the draft. And he may wind up being proven right. I think he was first-round pick worthy. I think he's being punished in part for sins of the father. I think he's being punished in part for sort of the way he's handled himself. And certainly some of these meetings with teams must not have gone well for teams to have snubbed him as far as the first round is concerned. We got NBA playoff talk next. All right, we take it to segment 2 on the show. Coming up in 10 minutes, Robert Littal, Black Sports Online founder. I want to get his thoughts on Shedeur Sanders slipping out of the first round. His answer may surprise you when it comes to the Shedeur Sanders dropping out of the first round. That whole story. Also want to get his thoughts on Shannon Sharpe, who is benched over at ESPN. Says he's taking himself out until the start of around NFL preseason. Sounds like a push, jumper will push you sort of situation to me. I want to see what Robert Littal thinks of that. But Sam Yarnell, we got to get to the NBA. And, of course, 3 game threes last night. Start with the Knicks in Detroit. Obviously, one of the more competitive series here. We thought there'd be maybe a few competitive series, and this is obviously one of them. And frankly, that's what's going to save the first round of the NBA playoffs, Sam, are these 3 competitive series, because you've got, 5 other ones that really aren't competitive. So the Knicks and Pistons is one of those series that they need to be competitive, obviously, for that reason. And as long as you have one good game, every night, out of 3 that suck. I think the NBA is going to have to take that. The Knicks go on the road last night in Game 3, and look, they play their most complete game of the series so far. They played 48 minutes of hard-nosed basketball, almost found a way to cough it up late. The NBA's clutch player of the year in Jalen Brunson, doing clutch things as always. And can I just say this? I know this is an aside. I can't believe that we've had a replay system in the NBA now for a few years, and coaches still haven't figured out to save it until late in the game. I know there are some stupid, bad calls that are made by officials, but how many times do I have to see coaches use a challenge in the second quarter that they wind up losing, or they win it and come back on the offensive end and don't even score, that isn't even critical to the overall game, and then late in the game when you need one, it's not there. And it just boggles my mind sometimes the way coaches use this stuff. But the Knicks get a win, reclaim home court advantage, and it feels like reclaim control of the series, Sam.
I will say, though, Jason, to your point, that the NBA does not do any sort of job in helping the coaches make it easy to keep their challenges until late, with all the convoluted rules around, oh, well, if it's inside the last 2 minutes, no one can challenge anything. You can only call regular timeouts. So if I'm a coach, I'm going to save my challenge until the fourth quarter, but if there's 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter and there hasn't been a controversial play yet, am I challenging just a random sideline out of bounds? I think that the rule with regard to the coaches challenge, and I guess it's kind of across sports, not being able to use it late in games, to me, kind of always defeats the purpose. If you can't challenge the biggest plays of the game, what's the point in challenging the non-big plays in the game? Regardless, different conversation for the middle of the summer when we have nothing else to talk about. On the Knicks side of things, yeah, they really did try to choke this one away, but it was a dominant performance there at the beginning. I mean, they were suffocating the Detroit Pistons. And I think that the point that you made about the NBA kind of needing this series to be interesting is a very good one, because they really do. But I will say, Jason, I was shocked. I thought last night in Memphis we were going to get a huge upset, and then all of a sudden the Thunder come roaring back. Lord. That's got to be good for the ratings a little bit, right?
Oh, my God. What a mess. What an absolute mess last night. You get the...
That was horrible, man. Yeah. The Grizzlies threw up all over themselves.
Yeah, yes, they did. Well, I mean, Ja Morant gets hurt at the end of the first half, and they have a 29-point lead or whatever it is, or 27-point lead at the end of the half, or 20-point lead, whatever it is, at the end of the first half. And then the Thunder go on this run in the second half without Ja Morant on the floor. And for the second straight night, you have a player get hurt on a play where he's undercut by a defender. And again, in this case, Dort is just gone, is kind of sliding to the ground. There was nothing intentional about, sort of the way it happened. And Morant goes down hard. And I will keep saying this, though. So much of this points back to just the physical nature that we're seeing of these NBA playoffs. And not this play in particular, but we've seen countless guys either going down injury related. We're seeing a lot of pushing and shoving and a lot more contentious play because of how physical the officials are letting it get. And then the officials have to run in and issue technicals and flagrant fouls and all this stuff in situations where they really might not be warranted to try and pull guys back off the precipice. When the reality is, the reason it's getting that physical and contentious, I'm not saying it has to be, NBA All-Star game like, and guys get to run up and down the floor and nobody touches anybody. But at the same time, Sam, the league continues to put itself in this position vis-a-vis its decision to allow this game to be so much more physical than it ever is. I was texting with Stan Van Gundy about it the other night, and I said it's the equivalent of if Major League Baseball had a strike zone for the entire regular season, that was one thing. And then in the postseason decided, you know what, we're going to make it ankles to your neck for a strike zone. And pitchers and hitters would be like, what is going on here? That's what the NBA's done with this decision to allow it to be so much more physical in the postseason.
Well, but here's the thing. If they did this during the regular season, Like, if they officiated games the same
Nobody
way
would
as they
be
are now
around.
during the regular season, which I know would never happen, but ratings would go through the freaking roof, man.
Well, I don't know. Everybody would be injured. And they would have nobody to play. They'd have nobody left at the end of the season if the game was played this hard for 82 games. Oh my God. Mental rest, physical rest nights. Oh my God, they'd be off the charts. You think right. You think guys are going to play like this during the regular season? No way.
To me, that seems like there's got to be some sort of common ground that you've got to be able to find if you're the NBA, because quite frankly, now you've made the regular season unwatchable to new fans, and you've made the playoffs unwatchable to current fans. You've done a real number on your sport there, NBA. You really have.
They really have. And now you got John Morant, who's likely going to be out. That series in Memphis likely to end with a sweep. And boy, say this, Sam, the Los Angeles Clippers just continue to impress in these playoffs. They could easily be up 3-0 in this series. That game one loss in Denver was certainly there for the taking. And Kawhi Leonard continues to be great. James Harden was excellent last night, and I tell you, I'd be shocked if the Clippers didn't win this series now.
I think that's a touch far for me, because I think just as easily, Jason, as they could be up 3-0, they could be down 1-2. Think about that game, too. It was a lot closer than we made it out to be. James Harden didn't show up, and if it weren't for Kawhi Leonard playing like 2019, they wouldn't have won that game.
Well, we also had some poor decision-making on the final shot in that game, too.
Christian Brown.
Christian Brown, your favorite of the week. We're coming back. Robert Littal next. This Friday edition of the show continues. Every Friday, we welcome in our friend Robert Littal, founder of Black Sports Online. Joins us to talk about the top stories of the week. There are two stories I want to talk about with you. One, I have avoided all week just because I wanted to talk about it with you. And the other is Shedeur Sanders. So the Shannon Sharpe story, which has kind of evolved throughout the week. It started with the news that he was being sued for $50 million. Tony Busby, representing a woman in a civil suit, not a criminal suit, important to mention, and going after Shannon Sharpe for $50 million. He says it's essentially a shakedown, consensual sex. She says it was not. And now we've got, sort of different things leaking out, text messages, audio recordings, you name it. Then the news came after Shannon Sharpe was on the air Monday and Tuesday. Shannon Sharpe announced yesterday, I believe it was, that he's not going to stay on the air at ESPN. He's going to take some time off until the start of football season. So I ask you, first of all, with where the story is right now, understanding these things evolve, they change, you're going to get different bits of reporting. Where this thing is by Saturday, Sunday, Monday could be totally different from where it is now. But where it is as of Friday, April 25th, what do you make of it?
Well, I don't think he's ever going to come back to ESPN.
That was my next question. Thank you.
Right. Because it's a twofold issue, I think, for Shannon Sharpe. I think on the one hand, I do think people are giving him the benefit of the doubt on what is he's actually being accused of. And I think a lot of that is because the lawyer is Tony Busby, because of the way that it has come out, because of some of the things that we've seen, in the past with these type of lawsuits, not, when they don't go to the police, first. I do feel people are giving him the benefit of the doubt on that. I think the issue as far as ESPN and maybe some of the other high-profile things that he does is the fact that it's factually true that the woman was 19 years old and he was, 53, 54 years old at the time of them getting together. I think for some people, they're having a hard time getting past that, especially when you add in some of the more graphic aspects of the relationship. So I think for the ESPNs and maybe those that have corporate type of sponsor, that may be a little bit too much.
Disney.
But for the podcast and the nightcap and stuff like that, that may be able to survive it.
I don't know, because they're talking about, what are they talking about? $100 million podcast contract is what they're talking about for him. I wonder if even the podcaster can survive that sort of thing when you're talking about having to make that much of an investment in him. Robert.
Well, the only reason I say that is because you look at some of these podcasters that have gotten all of this money. They aren't the most virtuous individuals, in the world. And I'm not saying, Shannon is a bad person or anything like that, but considering what I've seen, some of the individuals that have gotten multi-million-dollar podcast deals, their past, let's just say, aren't squeaky clean.
No.
I mean, so that's just why I feel like he may be okay in that realm.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if how much of his brand can survive this. And I agree with you. I don't think we're going to see him on ESPN again. By the way, my favorite part of this story might have been this. Paul Heyman on the Pat McAfee show talking about Shannon Sharpe. Watch this.
See, CM Punk does as much good to my reputation as Shannon Sharpe does to ESPN.
Oh, no, jeez. Oh, boy. All right, see, all right, we don't need that. A lot going on.
Don't ooh me. I'm not the one getting sued.
Whoa, okay, all right. Whoa.
What do I always say? Everything is wrestling when it comes down to it. Everything is
And Paul
wrestling.
Heyman wasn't joking, by the way. I think Paul Heyman was not joking. And look, if you're ESPN and you go with Pat McAfee and you ride the crazy bus, sometimes crazy things are going to happen. Shedeur Sanders, I was shocked by your reaction last night when I texted you about Shedeur Sanders not being drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. Your reaction really surprised me. And by the way, for those who missed it earlier in the show, I said nothing is more emblematic of last night than the shot of the empty room at the draft headquarters of Shedeur Sanders in Texas. Nothing is more emblematic than that shot. Hey, let's go to the party. Oh, it's an empty couch. Your level of surprise here when it comes to Shedeur Sanders not being drafted in the first round, because it surprised me what you texted me last night.
Yeah, one thing I want to make clear, the coverage, I'm never happy at draft season because they always pick one normally black quarterback where all these anonymous sources and anonymous coaches and all of that stuff comes out and they trash a kid, and it's just ugly, and it's really a microcosm of society, and I didn't like that it happened with Shedeur Sanders. But, I've started to do, because I got so sick of the term draft expert, I started to just do my own research on quarterbacks in the NFL draft and prospects. And when I looked at Shedeur Sanders, I saw, maybe a mid first round pick, a late first round pick, an early second round pick. So as far as the actual evaluation, I wasn't shocked that he wasn't picked in the first round, because I can definitely understand why a team would say, something, we like him, but we don't like him in the top 5. We don't like him in the top 10, or we have other needs in the back of the draft. And normally in the back of the draft, those teams have better quarterbacks. And, the Giants, they took Jackson Dart because that's their reputation, I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, that's nothing against Jackson Dart. I hope he's good. I felt like him and Shedeur were in the same realm. And then it just becomes a preference thing. I don't think he stays off the board long today. But I wouldn't have thrown that big of a party without a 100% guarantee from a team that I was going to be picked.
I agree with you on that. Real quick, I only got about 30 seconds. Is he being punished for the sins of the father? Or the perceived sins of the father?
I'd say it's a gift and a curse, because if he was Shedeur James, not LeBron's son, but he may not have gotten as much NIL money or as much fame or as much, he wouldn't be, having to watch and all of that good stuff. So there's a gift to being a famous son, and there's a curse. Same with Bronny. And so I think you got to take the good with the bad.
Robert Littal is the founder of Black Sports Online. Go and check him out there on X as well at BSO. Thank you, my friend. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
I hope next week's a little less hectic than this week was.
Welcome back to this Friday edition of the show. No sport is left behind here. Especially when we got this guy, Dennis Bernstein, thefourthperiod.com, SiriusXM NHL radio to talk to us from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. We're on in Canada. We love you guys over on Game Plus. Fubo carries us up there as well. Dennis, a lot to talk about. And look, we'll get to the series that you're watching there with the Oilers and Kings, but let's start with a couple of things that took place on Thursday night and give a little recency bias, I guess you could say. And look, I mean, your level of surprise at what Florida did winning the first two games in Tampa.
For a guy who picked the Tampa Bay Lightning in 5, how do you think it is? It's pretty high. Shocking. You know, it's funny. You talk to coaches near the end of the season, teams like Winnipeg and teams at the top about resting players. And what do the coaches say? Can't turn it on and off. The Panthers were 3-6-1 in their last 10 games. They looked old. They looked beat up. They looked tired. They looked like they played too much hockey. And they go into Tampa against a team that's red hot and do that. The championship medal showing in the first two games, a shocking outcome for me. I had Tampa going to the Cup final. Now they got to go down to Fort Lauderdale and win 2 games. I don't think so. I picked Tampa in 5. Now it's starting to look like it could be the Panthers in 5. Just a great performance. Great work by Bobrovsky and Nick. To me, yeah, shocking outcome in the first 2 games in Tampa.
Yeah, and Lightning had their chances late in that game last night and unable to get one in. The late empty netter for Florida. They win 2-0. Look, we thought last week when we had this conversation that the Stars were in a world of trouble. You know, they had lost like 7 of 8 coming into the playoffs. They lose Robertson to injury right before the end of the season. And then they go and beat one of the best teams in hockey 2 of the first 3 games of this series. Try and help me understand this.
I can't because I picked the Colorado Avalanche to win the Stanley Cup. So I'm trying to figure it out. But here's what happened. Look, they found a way. Tyler Seguin coming back. You know, Jason Robertson, everybody talked about Jason Robertson. He's out. Ty came back and scored in, I think, both games, scored a big goal in game 3. And, you know, it's different. The overtime's different in the Stanley Cup playoffs, Jason, right? I mean, you had a guy like Colin Blackwell, a 4th liner, scoring a goal. Maybe it is their year. And then they go in, and a game that I thought they had no chance to win. Gabriel Landeskog, for the first time in 3 years, over 1,000 days, comes back. The roof blew off Ball Arena, and they found a way to limit that team to 1 goal with all those players. Just a great coaching job by Pete DeBoer and great defensive play for a team that I didn't think had them in him. I had it going the other way in about 6 games, but now Dallas is the favorite to emerge. This was going to be a tough series. I'm not counting the Colorado Avalanche out. I think they can hold serve and get to game 4 and get out 2-2. But right now they're behind the 8 ball, and it's a shocking display of defense by Dallas, but a lack of offense by Colorado once we got to the postseason.
Vegas Golden Knights, Minnesota leads that series 2-1 after a 5-2 win last night. And look, we looked at the Vegas Golden Knights, obviously, as one of the favorites entering this postseason. Again, how do you explain sort of what we've seen?
Why do you keep bringing up all the series that I picked?
We're all getting them wrong right now, Dennis. We're all getting them wrong.
My biggest takeaway after 3 games of that series was if Kirill Kaprizov played the entire season, he would have been the Hart Trophy MVP winner for this league because he was the leader at like 20 games in. They had the best record in the league in 20 games. He went out. Eriksson Ek went out. They got healthy. They're big. They're physical. They can match the physicality of the Vegas Golden Knights. It's still a shocking outcome, though, because I really thought Vegas was really loaded this year. Didn't have them coming out of the West, but had them going to the conference final. Now it's in jeopardy because a team that plays poorly at home, like Minnesota, those 2 guys back in a lot, they're getting goaltending from Gustafsson. It's not a shocking outcome, but one I didn't expect right now. And they're feeling it right now because they went into Vegas and won that game too. It gave them confidence, and they're scoring goals. So, yeah, it's a great job by John Hines behind the bench and the team that nobody gave a chance, really, other than maybe people that live in Minnesota.
The series that you're watching and that you'll be taking in, Edmonton, or that you have taken in, Edmonton and Los Angeles, with the Kings up 2-0 in that series and really dominating through the first 2 games.
If I told you one team would score 12 goals in 2 games, have 5 power play goals and convert 50% of the power plays, you would have told me it was the Edmonton Oilers. It's the other team. But I told you, Jason, I've been telling people for like the last month to 6 weeks, this is a different Kings team. They still play defense. They still get goaltending, but they got a lot of offense, Jason. They really do. They have 3 lines that roll. Quentin Byfield, you have to score the second goal of the game in game 2. Very few players can make that elite play. This is a deep, dangerous team who's feeling it right now. But I will say this, tonight in Edmonton, this will be the most difficult game the Kings will play all season. This is do or die. It's not game 7. It might be game 6.5 for Edmonton. This is a wounded team that, I'll be honest with you, Jason, I've said this before coming into the series. The Edmonton Oilers of last season, I went to game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. It's not the team this year. The supporting cast isn't as good. They're banged up. And the biggest issue in this series for Edmonton Oilers, no Mattias Ekholm. You can see the way they played defense in the last 2 games. He's a missing piece. He's not going to be coming back for the series. That's a major reason why the Kings are up 2-0. Maybe they don't get the game tonight, but they are clearly a better, deeper team, and I think they emerged from this to play the winner of Vegas and Minnesota.
In the final 45 here, St. Louis, Winnipeg throws up a dud last night. Yeah. They look good through the first 2 games of that series. Any reason to be concerned if you're a Jets fan?
Yeah, I picked this game. I picked Winnipeg in 7. But this is going to be a very tough series. Now, iron sharpens iron. If they get out of the series and play the winner of Dallas, Colorado, it will help them. But they're missing 2 big offensive players, Gabe Vilardi and Nikolai Ehlers. It's making a difference. It made a difference last night, and I think this is a long series. So, Jet fans, strap in. It's going to be a long series, but I think your team can get it in Game 7 back in Winnipeg.
What was your level of surprise at Dan Bilesma being fired in Seattle?
Very surprised. 1 year. You don't give a coach 1 year. There must be something else going on there, Jason, that you only get 1 year because they love him. He was great for his AHL affiliate in Coachella Valley. And a surprising outcome. Not sure what's going on in Seattle right now. They need better players, Jason.
And not as much of a surprise with Peter Laviolette being fired by the Rangers. We're out of time, Dennis. I got to go. I always appreciate you. Enjoy the playoff hockey. We'll talk to you next week.
Well, it's a pleasure, JP. Thanks for the time.
We're coming back. Sports Wrap continues on this Friday. Coming up in 10 minutes, Sammy Arnell returns for Odds and Ends with a focus on Major League Baseball. But it is Friday, and if it's a Friday, it's a NASCAR Friday with this guy. He's back, Tino Patino, NASCAR betting insider. You could hear him on the weekends giving some picks out and dispensing advice on SiriusXM NASCAR radio, which I was driving around listening to the other day. So I want to get your thoughts on a couple of things before we get to this week's race, the Jack Links 500, coming off the bye week or the off week, as it would be, taking place at Talladega. But before I get to that, I want to ask you about Kyle Larson, who wrecked an Indy car for the first time. It was open practice at the 2.5 mile oval track out at Indy, which I've, by the way, kissed the bricks at, which is very cool. One of the cooler things I've gotten to do in my life: drive around the track and then kiss the bricks. But I want to ask you, with so much invested in him from a Cup Series standpoint, you got him doing dirt track races, you've got him doing Xfinity races, you've got him doing truck races, now you've got him doing IndyCar. At some point, when you're talking about the best driver in the world, arguably, and how much is riding on his success, does the team have to sort of protect Kyle Larson from Kyle Larson at some point?
I would say no, because all of those things that you mentioned is what has made up Kyle Larson to be this great, to be considered one of the best drivers in the world, and to be great at driving in all these different disciplines, whether it's dirt racing with the sprint cars, Cup Series action, all 3 series there, or now we see him in IndyCar as well. I think they don't have too much of a worry. Obviously, they don't want him to get hurt, but him testing the limits in a test session for the Indy 500, perfectly fine for me. I feel like the team feels the same way. If you're gonna wreck, have it happen then. I don't think he'll make the same mistake twice in that aspect.
But it's like, we know you're great. Everybody recognizes you're one of the best in the world. So at some point, don't you have to say, pull back a little bit? I'm not saying don't go and do it, test the IndyCar and all that, but I'm talking about everything else that comes with him as well.
That's his driving style, is being aggressive. That's what we see him do each and every week on the Cup Series side. So I understand the thought process there, like maybe pull back a little, maybe be a little bit more on the safer side or conservative side in all aspects of racing. But I don't think he'd be as good if people were to try to hold him back a little bit. He's like a Lamar Jackson in the NFL. You're not going to tell Lamar to stop running or stop, throwing at when he does on the run and everything like that. The crazy moves he's going to make as for Patrick Mahomes and the best top caliber people in those sports. So I'd say no, he's got to keep doing him, and I think that's what makes him as great as he is.
Are you surprised that he is as high of a favorite as he is for the Indy 500 right now? That he's basically co-favorite to win the Indy 500?
Yeah, that isn't surprising just because we saw it last year as well, but it's definitely not a proper number, I would say. It's just based off of all the fanfare around him. If it does happen, a lot of people want to have that winning ticket of him winning the Indy 500 and potentially then sweeping the weekend with the Coke 600 as well there, getting the back-to-back, getting the double feature. It's such a high-regarded thing that I think that's why we're seeing that such low price.
All right, so how would you sum up this first half of the season, Tino? Like if there's a headline to you at the top of the newspaper, what would it read?
To me, I think it would say big dogs rise to the top. And what I mean by that is the top teams in NASCAR have continued to show out this entire season. And not just the teams, but the drivers as well. Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Christopher Bell. Not only have they won multiple races this season, but that's something that we didn't see happening that much last year in terms of winning back-to-back or races in a row. Christopher Bell has done so. Denny Hamlin almost got 3 in a row as well. We saw Kyle Larson end the off weekend or before it off hot. So to me, I think that's key, is seeing those top teams continuing to dominate this season.
All right, Jack Link's 500, easy for me to say, out there at Talladega, and we know there's going to be a lot of action and potentially a lot of wrecks. What are you looking for? Who do you like this week?
So when it comes to betting at Talladega, I'm not afraid to pick some winners in this one. I know some people are, and rightfully so because of the chaos, but certain drivers have mastered this racetrack. Ryan Blaney's the favorite, rightfully so. He has 2 top 3 finishes in the last 5 races at this track. He's plus 1,000, but Bubba Wallace brings good value. Plus 2,200 for him. He's great at the super speedways. A driver like Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who we don't talk about a lot, he won here last fall. I like his odds, 28-1 to do so again. He is the 4th best average finish all time at this racetrack. Dale Earnhardt, Davey Allison, William Byron, and then Ricky Stenhouse Jr. So it's interesting to see the types of drivers who have mastered super speedway racing at Talladega.
And Tyler Reddick won it last year as well.
Yeah, Bubba Wallace's teammate, exactly. So good point there. Another thing that's important to note from that standpoint are drivers below the cut line in the standings right now, who feels like they're in a win and get in type of position, a must-win scenario. Brad Keselowski is looking like that right now. He's 14-1 to get the win. He finished in 2nd in both Talladega races last year in 2024.
Well, you mentioned Bubba. He's done fine on the points front this year, and I mean, I would imagine he could continue that approach, or does he have to start looking now with a greater sense of urgency?
Well, we talked about headlines early on, right? So I would say Bubba's headline is a great start to the year for him. 8th right now in the points, right below his teammate in Tyler Reddick, who's in 7th. I don't think he's going to have to start pushing the issue or being too aggressive at any racetracks as of now. He's solidifying himself by getting those stage points like we talked to him about in a prime spot to stay up there and make the playoffs on points. So he can go and be aggressive on these super speedways because he has that cushion, but I don't think we see him do too much and hopefully not hurt that good cushion he does have.
All right. Tino Patino, ladies and gentlemen. Talladega this weekend. Always appreciate you. Check him out on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio on the weekend as well with his betting insights. Always appreciate you, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
We're coming back with more Sports Wrap. Don't go anywhere. Odds and ends and some baseball talk. Wraps it up next. All right, just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Friday. A few reminders for you. 1, Sports Wrap weekends. Everything we do throughout the week, we wrap it up into a nice 30-minute package, available on many of these same affiliates. If not, check your local listings for time and schedule. It could be on a different channel. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast, available Monday through Friday. over on all your favorite podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon, anywhere you get a podcast. You can listen to this show as you drive into work, take the subway, the train, whatever it may be, or it could just be good background noise while you're cooking. Sports Wrap with Jason Page, the YouTube channel. We are really doing a big push on this with content on the YouTube channel. It is always updating. There are Sports Wrap shorts that we put up there, sometimes clips from the show, sometimes extra clips because there's news breaking throughout the day and we're not on for an entire 24 hours. So we have to sometimes fill in the gaps. We do that on the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. Always good content there, I promise you. Even throughout the weekend, I'll be updating it while I'm at a bowling tournament this weekend in California. So, without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to it. Time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. Major League Baseball. Let's talk about it. Some interesting things going on in Major League Baseball. And we haven't talked a ton of baseball outside of the guests that we've had on the show this week, but there have been a number of injuries that just continue to sort of plague the pitching markets right now around the league. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. I know we mentioned it with our friend David Ardsma. But Blake Snell dealing with discomfort. He's not going to be throwing. The Royals are dealing with injuries in the pitching department now with Cole Reagans, their ace, leaving with a groin issue. Every time you turn around, it feels like there are pitchers that just can't stay healthy right now, Sam. Continues to be an issue around baseball.
Yeah, Kumar Rocker too, Jason, someone who I wanted to talk about. We didn't have enough time to yesterday with Jason. He's now going to the injured list as well with a hamstring injury. So, you know, a very highly touted prospect in that Rangers rotation got his chance here early, and I don't think lived up to the expectations that any of us had for him, even the low end of those expectations. So it'll be exciting to see a guy like Kumar Rocker potentially get right. But I agree with you. It does feel like, even more so than last year, in a season where it felt like everyone was injuring their elbow, doesn't seem like a lot of elbow injuries this year. It's a lot of lower body, it's a lot of hamstring, some obliques getting thrown in there, which you always kind of see, but it's a lot of those scary non-elbow injuries for baseball players. An oblique, a hamstring, a lat. These are all injuries that you really can't recover from outside of doing anything besides not moving.
By the way,
what is the hardest thing for a professional athlete to do? Not move. So those injuries always worry me this early in the season.
Let me ask you something. Didn't you have a bet for the month of April on the White Sox? What was the win total number you had for them?
White Sox under 11.5 wins before the end of April. One of the most
not
free
easy. It's not
bets
done
you'll
yet,
ever
though,
come
is it?
across in your life.
Is there? They'd have to win out for the month, or is that officially a wrap?
I don't even know if they have 5 games.
They got
left
6
before
wins.
The end of April.
Let's see, because they got their 6th win last night. I was getting ready to congratulate you, and then I looked at the number and I said,
they have
is it a wrap?
Exactly 5 games
it's a wrap.
left. So even if they win out, it'd be 11.
Meet Sam at the window. He gave that one out. Said, take the White Sox under 11.5. White Sox did win last night, beat the Twins 3-0 in a shortened 7-inning game because of rain. But the White Sox 6-19 on the season. Can I also say hats off to the Mets? And it's not easy for me to say this, being a Yankee fan, but the Mets have been, wow, here in the first month of the season. They have the best record in baseball at home. They're another one-loss team. I think they're 12 or 13-1 now in the early going. They didn't play yesterday, but we didn't talk about them yesterday when we had David Ardsma on the show. And I just want to say, hats off to the Mets, who are off to a great start. And look, you know, I'm not saying his numbers are like through the roof or anything like that, but you know, you go and get Juan Soto, and you look at, you know, sort of where this team is. Yes, he's hitting .233, but it's what he's doing to make other guys around him in the lineup better. Pete Lindor. That's a combination of Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso, by the way, because I was looking at both of them. Francisco Lindor hitting .309, Pete Alonso hitting .341 in the early going. And we said when they got Juan Soto and we looked at this lineup, the guy that was going to capitalize on it the most was Pete Alonso, and Pete Alonso is capitalizing on it the most, Sam.
Yeah, Pete Alonso's making himself a lot of money come this offseason because if you'll remember to that contract extension, he has opt-outs after every single year. So Pete Alonso will hit free agency again this offseason, and he's going to get a lot more money than he even got last offseason. So just get ready for that, folks, because the kid's tearing the cover off the baseball early. Yeah, listen, this happens seemingly every year in this new modern era since the whole Verlander Scherzer thing. I mean, we remember how that went, right? Wait until September. That's always my thing with this baseball club. They have this weird tendency for just the calendar to turn to June and everything go wrong, and they'll lose like 20 of 30 or 23 of 35 or something like that. So yeah, again, I think that there are a lot of things that I could sit here and point to in the last minute to say they're unsustainable, but I'll save your time for another show.
And they're about to get Jeff McNeil back. So, I mean, hey, look.
What?
It's hard to argue
the day
with
after they optioned Brett Beatty to AAA. Hey, how'd that Brett Beatty experiment work out? All I heard for years is how that kid's the future.
Mets are 18-7, by the way. It's going to put a wrap on us for the week. Thank you to Robert Littal. Thank you, Dennis Bernstein. Thank you, Tino Patino. Thanks to you, Sam Yarnell. We'll see you all back here next week for more Sports Wrap, or this weekend for Sports Wrap Weekend Edition.